Good morning and welcome to, or good afternoon, depending on where you are, because we've got a special guest coming today from Europe. So it's actually good afternoon, technically, and good morning for many others that might be watching us from the western part of the U.S. We've got a great episode today. Oftentimes, Meg and I, and we've been doing this for 3+ years, we've had a kind of a U.S.-centric conversation. Today, we open that aperture up and we bring it out more global. And we've got us joining today Rachel Bell, who heads NTT's business applications marketing side, and really excited to dig in. Meg will give a proper introduction in a moment, but just as a reminder, administrivia-wise, we've done this. Meg, my co-host, who's been a former CMO and former head of Serious Decisions research, she and I have done 300+ episodes of best practices around go-to-market strategies. If you have a specific question, you could either ping Meg or I, or in the comment below, you can also link to the YouTube channel, and it'll bring you right to the live replays. And you can even replay this conversation if you miss anything. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Meg to do a proper introduction of Rachel.
Great. Thanks, John. And thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're excited you're here and excited for, I think, a really useful conversation today. When you are doing marketing to large strategic accounts in very large, complex strategic deals, it's fundamentally different than the way that I think a lot of account-based marketing takes place, particularly in the US. But that's not to say that this isn't also something that a lot of US companies deal with. Excuse me. And we're excited to have you here with us today, Rachel, to talk about your experience and perspective on the ways that truly global account-based marketing is different. But also you have an interesting role in that. You are also responsible for industry marketing. And I think there's so much connection and overlap with account-based. I'm very excited for you to touch on that today too. So welcome, Rachel, and please tell us a little about your role.
Thank you. And thank you both for having me today. I'm really delighted to take part and have this conversation with you. So I'm Rachel Bell. So I am the VP of Global Industries and Account-Based Marketing at NTT Data. NTT Data is a global IT services and consulting company. We are part of the big Japanese organization NTT group, but we offer end-to-end full stack IT services to major corporates at a global level. So I look after industry marketing and account-based marketing for our most strategic accounts.
And Rachel, maybe if you can share a little bit about how the industry marketing got combined with the account-based focus. I know a lot of times in companies, industry marketing becomes sort of a proxy for account-based because that's one of the reasons that accounts might have something in common, but super curious to get your take on the synergies there and how that works with your role.
Yeah, so interesting. It used to be kind of slightly separate. So the way that NTT Data grows as an organization is often through acquisitions and bringing different operating companies with under NTT together, and to make us much more of a bigger powerhouse within the industry. So in the past, we've had industry marketing in some respects, and then we've always, for the last 3 years, had a global ABM center of excellence and function. So from very early on, we have really recognized the importance and the value that account-based marketing delivers to an organization in terms of growth. And we have a very clear mandate from our CEO around growth. So that's our mandate. That's where we're focused, is growth, but focused growth as well. So we are very focused in terms of the clients that we want to grow in, the specific regions, and also the specific industries. So with that, there's been some investment around, kind of building out global verticals. And given kind of the, like you mentioned it yourself, Meg, the alignment between ABM and industries, historically from a COE perspective, which I run, our focus is very much on one-to-one ABM, so proper strategic ABM, big accounts, lots of resource and investment into those accounts, and then the one-to-few piece. And the one-to-few piece is typically and historically, we've always done it around a particular industry or, an industry challenge. So it made sense when you're kind of looking at how do we go to market, how do we go and talk to our clients, we kind of have the way that we operate in our go-to-market strategy is that we will look at the kind of the big brand campaigns. So that's, demonstrating to our clients that we understand the NTT data, understands the market, then bringing it down to the industry program to demonstrate that we understand our clients' industries, and then down into that ABM level around demonstrating that we understand the organization, we understand the individual in the organization as well. So it just made sense from what we are trying to do with the clients, and how you bringing the two together really enables you to have that differentiated relevance and a better client experience, because you're bringing in some of that expertise and local knowledge to really drive growth and expand relationships into our key accounts.
I love how you share about kind of that one to few and one to many, or one to few and one to one differentiation there. And also, it looks like you got one of your fans here. It says Rachel Bell is one of the best. So one of your fans tuning in today.
That will be Sloan Newman from the North America team.
It brings up an interesting point. And I was reflecting back on our other episodes, and Meg, I think you and I, it's been rare that we've had a practitioner talk about one to few or even one to one, believe it or not, at the practitioner level. We've had other consultancies, including both Meg and I, we consult in this area too, but we haven't had a lot of practitioners talking about like the one to few motion. And you mentioned industries, so I guess kind of a twofold question. What are the types of industries that you're focused on? And then how do you measure success in your function or in your role in those industries or in that one to few motion, just out of curiosity?
So we have kind of, well, I guess it's kind of 6 now, key focus verticals that we're investing at that global level currently. So banking and financial services is one, insurance is another one. And then we have this other big vertical called products, which doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but for us, that's the priority within products is manufacturing, resources, CPG, and automotive. So those are kind of our focus verticals, and those have really come about as a result of looking at where we believe the most growth is going to come from the accounts which fall within those different verticals. So then within those verticals, we've got a number of key accounts and global accounts, which is where we focus from our one-to-one perspective. And then for the other accounts, and again, we've done a lot of work in terms of really being focused and prioritizing the accounts that we want to go after and grow with. And I think probably from your experiences of ABM, you need to have that consistency, and you need to maintain, the right accounts and maintain that focus to really see the returns that you get from ABM. So this chopping and changing, and just because something's happened, you switch it out, doesn't really work. So we've done a lot of that in terms of making sure that we know exactly the right accounts that we're going after. From a measurement perspective, in terms of how do we measure growth, there's a couple of key kind of KPIs that we get measured on. So as I mentioned earlier, growth is what we are, targeted to do. So we look at pipeline. So what's our, the amount of pipeline in the accounts that we've been able to generate as a result of our programs, but also bookings as well. Like we have some significantly large deals in some of these accounts that we support through ABM and industry marketing. So, that kind of helping to close and to accelerate the time to close on some of these mega deals. And so bookings becomes another one. But then we have some other kind of key and I would say that those are kind of our hero metrics. But underlying that, some of the other ones that we do from an ABM perspective is we will look at things like, percentage growth, pipeline growth, year-on-year growth, average deal size, time to close. Have we improved the speed of, deal closure? And the other one that we're starting this year, which is, kind of to build that baseline, is very much around relationships. So we've got a particular focus around really understanding the stakeholder landscape in some of these global accounts, right? Because it's complex, and the buying groups and the buying cycle, all that kind of stuff is so vast now that we really need to spend the time and the effort in understanding our stakeholder landscape and understanding the level of influence that individuals have within what we're trying to do with the account, because it can change, right? Not everybody and not every senior person is the most impactful person on a particular deal you might be doing. So we're doing a big piece of work at the moment on piloting with some of our accounts, really getting down to that level of giving each individual in our stakeholder landscape a relationship quality score, so that then we can track it and see how our marketing activity is driving and improving the quality of that relationship. So that's another kind of key metric that we have, is around being able to demonstrate that ABM really is driving the improvement in relationships that we need and the expansion of relationships that we need in order to drive the growth that we need.
Yeah, that's a great collection of metrics. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate kind of the well-rounded nature of that too. It's not exclusively looking at pipeline or revenue. It's also looking at the things that tell you you're either heading in the right direction or your program overall is contributing to a healthy business. And kind of on that note, though, we've got a good question from Alan, which is, are there any verticals that are more suited to ABM, versus others? And you've just mentioned some of the likely suspects I see in a lot of companies: financial services, insurance, manufacturing, things like that. Was there any particular reason you'd say those stood out for your group, or any other kind of evaluative criteria that you apply when you're thinking about verticals?
So those verticals which we focus on are as a result of alignment with the business and where the business sees the growth, right? So, and that's looking at all the different data points that exist within our existing client base, and looking at, everything from current revenues to their, the amount of IT addressable spend, mapping our capabilities, where do we think we could grow, and also number of accounts within those verticals. So it was a whole, and I'm making it sound very simplistic, this is months and months of work that did this, but with a mandate and a real clear focus on being able to, on growth for us as an organization. When you're looking at those target accounts, you want to go after the ones where you believe the most growth to be, based on share of wallet, IT spend, mapping our capabilities. So I don't think you could really pick and say, financial services is a much stronger vertical to do ABM. Like some of them, like telco, for example, one of my colleagues, Hannah, she's trying to deal with that one, and that's a difficult one because of the different ways that we would operate. Sometimes with telcos, sometimes they are a competitor, sometimes they might be a partner, sometimes they're also a customer. So that adds an entire new dimension of complexity when you're looking at these from a one-to-one perspective. But for the other verticals, it's very much just around really identifying what is the client trying to achieve, what's that common business outcome, that common business goal that we're trying to drive, and then aligning your campaigns and your programs around that. And I think for us, we've had quite a lot of success, or we are starting to see a lot of success within the banking vertical. And that's primarily due to, we've got a number of big strategic accounts within that vertical that we really have been one-to-one accounts for a significant level of time. So we understand them, we understand their client challenges, we understand what they're trying to achieve. And we can take all of that insight and feed it into the industry programs. So you're getting that top-down and bottom-up view. So, it's all about data, it's all about insights, it's all about relevancy. So we will look at market trends, we will look at what's happening in the industry, we will look at, from a banking perspective, whether it's core modernization or payments or fin crime or whatever the particular topic and theme is. But then we will also marry it up with what are our clients actually focusing on, and we'll feed those two different levels of insight together to then determine what's the right play, approach, messaging that we want to take into that particular industry.
Yeah, and thank you. You anticipated my question about how account-based and industry marketing teams can work better together, because often I think we see them sort of not partnering up as much as they should, which made me very interested in the fact that your role combines them, which I think is really, really smart. But kind of thinking about all of the things that you've just described and all of the roles that you need to play, and actually we have a question too from Matthew around the percentage of time that you're focused on early stage versus progressing deals and sort of helping to accelerate to close. Thinking about those different roles that you and your team play and how you need to collaborate, what are the kinds of skills that you think account-based marketers at this level really need to have?
So I think for me, that an ABMer is a different type of marketer, right? They're not your standard marketer. They're kind of a bit of a hybrid between a marketing professional and almost like a sales professional as well. So you've got to have the ability there are some of the standard skills that you need, right? You need to be quite thick-skinned when dealing with salespeople, right? You need to have good project management skills to make sure that you're coordinating all of the different parts. You've got to be good at building relationships, because ABM is very much a team sport. It's a team game. Can't do it on your own. You've got to pull in the resources and the people that are around you in order to make you and the account team successful. So you've got to have some of those sorts of skills. But for me, it's really around having that ability to think differently. And when you're looking at an account and when you're looking at a client, you're reading the data, and you're reading the insights. So you're really getting down to that level of understanding what the client is trying to achieve, marrying that up with what's happening in the account, how you're dealing with them, how we as a company sell to them, what do we sell them to, and looking at it and thinking, okay, how do we do this differently? How do we change the conversation within this account? How do we move away from talking about how great our network is, or how to make your account AI, your network AI ready, to really looking at things like how can we improve the client experience, or really driving those much more higher level outcome focused strategic level conversations. And that's not an easy skill, easy skill to have. It's quite a unique one. But I would say that a lot of the success we've had in some of our ABM accounts, and where the account teams will come back and say that we've really added value, is that insights is being really insights and data driven in your thinking and your approach to formulate some different viewpoints, some hypotheses, some different viewpoints on how you would deal with that client, and make an account manager think differently. Like, client partners get so bogged down with the day-to-day running of an account and service issues and targets and blah blah forecasts and all of that kind of stuff, that they don't always have the time to step back and really think on the bigger scale and the larger scale. And that's where I think kind of, having that skill set and that ability to do that really does, demonstrate your value add to your client partner and into the accounts that you're focusing on.
Yeah, that hybrid skill set and the data-driven insights really, really resonates. I'm glad that you kind of pulled that out. And maybe just building on kind of that thought process, and knowing, I think just a few days ago you were in Japan, and today you're back in the UK. And we've asked this question of other global guests. How have you seen the definition of ABM kind of defined in your region versus, say, outside of your region? Like, is it viewed any differently in the UK than that of the US, than that of Asia Pacific? I'm curious what your viewpoint is on that.
So I don't know if I see it. That's an interesting question, actually, because I don't know if I see it as it varies dependent on kind of the region. I think it varies depending on the organisation sometimes, and the client, and the people that you're working with. I think for us, we have been, and I get called a purist all the time. And I'm too pure when it comes to ABM. But for me, when we're talking about one-to-one ABM, it is proper strategic ABM. We have a 7-step process that we go through with every account. We are incredibly detailed. We have a dedicated ABM, that works on that account and really builds out a proper plan of action for that account. So we're quite purist in that one-to-one piece, and that's why it's very limited to focused accounts. I think there is this general view that, oh, it's the buzzword, it's the hot buzzword, and just because you're serving up a personalized ad to somebody, that's one-to-one ABM. It's not, right? Like, it's not just, just being able to put your company logo on on a piece of collateral or a digital ad is not what I would call, kind of that kind of one-to-one ABM. So I think it just comes down to the differences are down to what the organization that you work for is trying to achieve with their ABM strategy, rather than it being a region by region difference.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I'm just thinking out loud, and maybe I could have framed the question a little bit differently. What I've noticed in the US is we're very technology oriented, and we kind of build for scale. And it seems like it's a little bit more built for the one to many use case. And there's still one to few and one to one. Whereas I've noticed in Europe or outside of the US, you guys seem to be a whole lot more thoughtful around the process and the data integrity and data kind of privacy. In the US, it's like the wild, wild west, which you're probably not surprised too much there. I don't know how to best frame that question, but just, I guess what I'm trying to think of is, are there regional nuances to the definition of ABM or the approach to ABM? But it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is, because of the purist view, you've kind of standardized it. You've got a standardized model, so there's not really interpretation. Am I hearing you right on that?
Yeah, within our organization, we have global processes. We have a set of standardized processes for how we roll out ABM. And again, from my center of excellence perspective, we only focus on one-to-one and one-to-few. The one-to-many piece is done by a different team, our digital demand team. And yes, that is a slightly different viewpoint on the different ABM platforms and technologies that you may use to serve up relevant, having that ability to serve up content quickly and at scale based on what intent that client is showing, and that kind of stuff. So that is one part of it. I think within Europe, you're bound by GDPR rules and all of that kind of stuff, which means you can't necessarily just go out there. You've got to be very mindful around who you're targeting and how you're targeting. You can't always target certain clients and different contacts and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas, like you say, in the US, you're a bit more kind of a bit more free for all with your targeting and outreach.
Yeah, I actually think the data privacy regulations make people better marketers. So I, as much as we have our degrees of freedom in the US, it doesn't always mean it's for the best. But that said, one of the things you mentioned that I think is really important, and I'd love to have you say more about, is being really clear on the objectives for your account-based efforts. And how do you work with other leaders within the business to make sure that you and your teams are focused on the things that really matter?
So we have very strong, engagements with the businesses, with the business units, and in particular with the client partners, right? So for me, the way that I would like to lead, and I expect my teams and the ABMers to be that extended member of the account team, right? So if you are dedicated to a particular account and that's your one-to-one account, then you are an extension of the sales team, right? You should be in all the account reviews. You should be in all of the sales meetings, because if you're not, how do you know where the priority is and where we need to be focusing? So from that respect, we will align our objectives with the account team, based on the goals of the account, right? So whether or not that's their targets, their revenue goals, their account plan, all of that kind of stuff. So we will align our goals to the account. We'll also look at things like, from an industry perspective, within our insurance vertical, there are 5 kind of what we call the big global accounts. So we understand and we know the strategy for that vertical and the growth strategy and how the global accounts play into that. So therefore, we make sure that the goals for those accounts are also aligned with that. So you're taking all of those different inputs And as part of like one step of our 7-step process for onboarding an account from, at a 1-to-1 level, there is a whole step around, defining and agreeing the objectives, for what you're trying to achieve with that account. Because if you're not clear and you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then how do you measure success by the end of it? So, you've very much got to be clear. And we would look around, we look at it kind of those three, and then everyone who knows about ABM will know about the three R's. So we will align our goals to the accounting, but we will look at revenue. So what's the revenue goal that we're trying to achieve? So very much aligned to the target, around to our pipeline goals. What's the relationship piece, which I talked a little bit about, and that could be anything from improving the number of connections that we have, to be breaking into a particular buying center, to demonstrating that we've improved the average relationship quality score from X to Y to Z, whatever. And then we'll look at kind of the reputation piece as well, because for us often, and kind of how we are as an organization and where we've come from, a lot of our accounts don't really understand the full scale of our organization. So they know us in a particular pigeonholed area. With these great growth plans, we have to have quite strong objectives and plans around how we shift and how we move that reputation and how they know us, in order for us to be able to grow into those accounts. So we will have specific, for each of our accounts, we will have kind of goals around the three R's.
This is an excellent question that Sloan brings up, and I want to enhance actually his question based on some observations in the U.S. that we've seen with, you can't have a conversation without introducing AI into it. The pressure here in the U.S. right now, which undoubtedly you're probably feeling elsewhere too, is doing more with less and potentially using AI to augment. And the big theme that we're hearing from a lot of marketers in the U.S. right now is an organizational re-review of using agents. And so then the question becomes specialization or generalist, which is very similar to what Sloan is kind of asking about here. Like, where do you place your bets at day's end, especially with AI coming onto the scene? Like, how do you think of things, from answering Sloan's question about the expertise on industries, or even in conjunction or without AI?
So I think that, and this is a personal view, right? Other people might have a different view. I think there's a lot to, I think having a specialism or deepening your expertise in a specific industry, I think is a very clever thing to be able to do, because I think it opens you up for career progression. So we could spend another half an hour talking about the career trajectory of an ABMer, right? But I think you could, by having that industry knowledge and having that deep level of expertise, it just adds something to not only your own skill set and your potential career progression, but also how you stand up and present yourself in front of the client, right? If you're an industry expert, as opposed to a generalist, you can go in and have those conversations with the sales team. You can talk to them in the language, in the language that the client understands. You can have those outcome-based conversations around the challenges that are faced in the industry. And I think we have tried to align ABMers to industries as well, because I think it gives you then that ability to look across a wider set of accounts. If you've got an account, one in banking, one in manufacturing, one in retail, for example, you're having to do 3 individual plans because there's not a huge amount of commonality between them. But if you've got 3 accounts all within the financial services sector, 90% chance is that there's going to be some common ground between those 3 accounts. And then you're designing one program. Yes, you may be targeting different people, and there may be some slight tweaks, but you're doing it once. So you get to do that repeatability, scalability piece across that subset of accounts. I think AI is a fascinating subject. I think everybody talks around AI. We can talk about AI again till the cows come home, and all the different use cases for AI within ABM. Do I think that AI will replace an ABMer? No, I don't. Not at the level that we try to do it, at the strategic level. I don't think you can take away that human element. It's definitely helping us in terms of being faster to speed to market. That's one thing that I will say that we've really identified, is having some of those tools makes us as ABMers less reliant on some of our counterparts and some of our co-workers, because you can go and do it yourself. Particularly within the insights piece, it makes you a lot more thoughtful, I think, and the data and the insights that you can gather from AI, I think is so powerful now, nowadays. But I don't think it will ever replace, because I think you have to have the ABM is about relationships at the end of the day, right? It's about building relationships with your client, and no amount of bots or agents or stuff is really going to replace that human connection, and that the fact that people will buy from people and people buy from people that they trust. You're not going to build up the same level of relationship with a bot as you would do with an individual.
Yeah, very important point. I think, especially now, it's a transition phase, but I agree with you that we're not looking at wholesale replacement of humans here. But with that in mind, one of the things you were kind enough to recently speak about on a video for Inflection Group was the need for kind of an ecosystem of partners, and how to build one that actually works and helps you with your mission. And all the things you talked about accomplishing. What would you describe as kind of the way you think about forming that sort of network of partners that help you to deliver along with your team?
Yeah, so we, so like I said before, I see ABM very much as a team sport, right? It's, you're reliant on such a big ecosystem of people to support you, and whether that's partners internally or, externally. I think for me, part of building a strong foundation and ecosystem of partners is taking them on the journey with you, and helping them to understand in the role that they're playing in the success of the program, or with the client, right? Rather than it just being, can you do this for me, can you do that for me? Taking the time to really explain to them why it's so important, and bring them on that journey. I would say we've got, from an external perspective, we have a set of core partners that really help to augment our ABM program and have skills in areas that we don't have, and we probably never will have or would never invest in. So Inflection Group is a great example of that. They've been with us since the very beginning. So since the inception of our program, when we decided, first of all, we wanted to start up an ABM Centre of Excellence and program, they've been there with us to help in just bringing some of the best industry thinking and knowledge to help us to shape a program which is right for our organization and our ever evolving organization as well. But they've also been fundamental in upskilling and training individuals. So we have a core set of ABMers who have been, practitioners, whatever, trained, fully trained and accredited ABMers, and their day job is doing ABM. What we have also done is it started to expand that out to field marketing and some of the portfolio marketers. And it's that same training, because what we're really trying to drive is ABM as an approach, not as a program. It's a way of thinking. It's a way that is inbuilt into the DNA of the organization and our marketing organization. So for us, it's really kind of, working and identifying the key partners that can just complement us and, help and understand our vision. So we've been very fortunate. We have kind of three major partners. We have a technology partner with Demandbase. We've got Inflection Group as our training partner. And then we have Agent 3, who, again, have been with us since the beginning, just in terms of helping us with a lot around the positioning, the strategy, the engagement planning, the creative side of things.
Yeah, Rachel, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate your perspective, and I love that idea of ABM as part of your DNA. I think when you really consider the business model that companies like yours and others have, and the need for a different way to engage with global strategic accounts, ABM really is the only answer. And I appreciate you, having brought it into the level of art form at the work that you do, or with the work that you do. Thank you again for joining us. John, any last questions or thoughts for Rachel?
Nothing on my end other than thank you, Rachel, for the contributions. Definitely very insightful about the one to few, one to many, the hybrid skill sets, how you're leveraging AI, and how you view ABM overall. So very, very helpful.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's been really great to speak with you today. So thank you.
It's our pleasure. And thanks everybody for joining us and for the lively chat and comments as well. Thanks everyone for that. And we will look forward to seeing you again very soon. And Rachel, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
All right. And happy Friday.
Cheers.